Our exclusive investigation of the Tulane University Police Department led to a major shakeup in that department this week.
And tonight, investigative reporter David Hammer has a follow-up. It involves a commander who was fired after we informed Tulane about her questionable record at the New Orleans Police Department. Here's David.
Our exclusive Tulane Police investigation resulted in a major shakeup at the University Police Department. A deputy chief resigned, and then so did the chief of police. Some of the complaints that launched our report also involved Tulane police officers with troubling disciplinary records from their time at the New Orleans Police Department.
We have a lot of people that were flunkies from NOPD. You know, is that the kind of police department we want? I wouldn't want my kid coming here with that.
For most of our month-long investigation, Tulane employed at least 3 officers who left NOPD after findings of misconduct. But at Tulane, they got to keep policing the general public, except under a cloak of secrecy because Tulane argues its police force is private.
Even as a police officer, I don't think a police agency should be able to hide behind, they work for the public.
Tulane investigated a series of anonymous complaints and ended up firing a top commander, Captain Angela Davis. Davis spent 21 years at NOPD, but these documents show she resigned under investigation in 2004. She had just been suspended and issued a criminal summons for hitting 2 fellow officers, a woman who had filed a complaint, and for verbal intimidation. In a telephone interview, Davis told us that incident happened off-duty, and she had put that part of her past behind her. She said she was honest about those issues when Tulane hired her in 2005 and showed us these positive performance reviews. But Tulane administrators said this week they only learned details of Davis's NOPD disciplinary record after we brought them to their attention. Davis said, quote, "I just don't understand why after 13 years at Tulane, they're suddenly bringing up my history at NOPD. She told us she's been scapegoated now that Tulane has received anonymous complaints about her, like this one from a current Tulane PD supervisor.
She wants to be in control. She wants to micromanage every single facet of everything. She wants to intimidate people. She wants to coerce people.
Davis confirmed her NOPD record is just one of the reasons she was fired last week. We obtained these pictures showing Davis's loaded handgun on a table set up for nursing mothers. The Glock nameplate, the semi-automatic clip, left right next to a binder with information about the university's lactation room.
Fully loaded, fully rounded, and filled to the brim with ammunition.
But one of Davis's subordinates says that wasn't the first time she left her weapon in a public restroom. Officer Jerron LaBeouf said he had previously recovered Davis's gun at Tulane Medical School, but no report on that incident was ever filed. Davis says she doesn't recall that happening.
I just don't understand how someone forgets they have a 4-pound weapon on the side of their hip.
This disciplinary file from the city of New Orleans shows Davis also left her weapon and a police radio on the trunk of her car and drove off, and didn't miss it until the end of her tour of duty. But Davis told us her gun and police radio were stolen from her car. Records show Davis served a 3-day suspension for leaving her weapon in the maternity restroom. She called it just a mishap and thought the punishment was over. But since then, 4 more complaints were made against her, including one for sexual harassment on a new female officer.
Sexual harassment actually has video footage.
Davis said if she touched the woman, it was only to tell her she was doing a good job. But we spoke to that officer, and she said she had to resign from Tulane PD because the university initially dismissed her complaint and misclassified it as a opportunity anti-discrimination issue. The officer appealed, saying, quote, "There's surveillance to further provide information regarding the Hertz Center incident. I don't understand how this could have been possibly overlooked." Here, the university admits it didn't review the video. But Davis showed us these records indicating that even after they reopened the case to review the video, they found no violation.
Did you see the video?
I did.
What does it show?
Show her stroking the young lady's arm 14 times.
Tulane administrators said they've greatly improved the background checks they do on new hires and would not have hired Davis if they had known about her NOPD record. Same goes for another officer who was fired from NOPD for battery against her fellow officers.
And then got hired on with Tulane. How? I have no idea.
Public court records show Tamara Grant was fired by NOPD in 2004 for striking fellow officers when they tried to arrest her boyfriend. Her public integrity file at NOPD says she put her hand on her weapon while yelling she would harm the arresting officer. And yet, just 4 years later, Tulane PD hired Grant. And last year, the recently resigned chief and deputy chief and the recently fired Captain Davis took Grant's word over that of 2 other officers, altering an internal investigation to fire the other officers instead. These internal Tulane Police documents tell the story. Grant and Officer Lance Tillman got into an argument where Tillman allegedly used profanity. Another officer was there and said she never heard the alleged profanity. Grant stayed on the force. Tillman and Lena Griffith, who was just nearby, were fired. This supervisor said Griffith was collateral damage in a toxic work environment.
She had a spotless record, sweet country girl from up north, never caused a problem. And she comes to this university, and for them to do what they did to her is just an abomination.
Lieutenant Maurice Trosclair conducted the internal investigation for Tulane PD and recommended the same minor punishment for all 3 officers, verbal counseling. That's what Grant received, but then sources with direct knowledge of what happened say Trosclair's report for Tillman and Griffith were changed to make it look as if he had recommended firing them.
He told me that he absolutely didn't feel that they should be terminated, but he couldn't speak up at the time out of fear that he would fall victim to the same circumstances.
The altered counseling reports for Tillman and Griffith were signed by none other than Angela Davis. Tillman and Griffith both declined to be interviewed for this story. Tulane said it's still investigating the incident, and if any mistakes were made in firing those officers, the school would make an effort to correct them. David Hammer, Eyewitness News.
Asked about Davis's contention that she was treated unfairly, Tulane spokesman Mike Strecker said, quote, "When issues keep coming up with the same employee, they become cumulative and can lead to more serious consequences."